This is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're at the OTCQB Executive Forum at OTC Marketplace in New York City. With me right now is Dr. James Manuso from RespireRx, publicly traded company with the symbol RSPI. Dr. Manuso, welcome to SNNLive.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on. So let's start for our audience. Let's get an overview of the company, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, RespireRx Pharmaceuticals, RSPI, as you mentioned on the OTCQB, is a company that's focused solely and exclusively on breathing disorders for which there are no approved medicines anyplace on earth. And specifically, we're after obstructive sleep apnea. We are also after opioid-induced respiratory depression, which in effect is a form of central sleep apnea, and then spinal cord injury. And as you may know, these are potentially lethal conditions, again, for which there are no approved pharmaceuticals. And we're fairly advanced clinically. We've just yesterday, in fact, filed an 8K alluding to a fairly large phase 2B study in obstructive sleep apnea.
So I want to know then what exactly the company is doing on the pharmaceutical side, and what's currently being done to help, make these conditions at least improve the quality of the lives currently, and then how you differentiate from that.
Of course. Well, presently, most of these conditions are treated with mechanistic devices, and appreciate that the CPAP device, as it's known for obstructive sleep apnea, is very effective. Unfortunately, very few of the patients who are prescribed the device use it appropriately. What it does is force wind into the air pipe in order to assure that people breathe properly throughout the course of the night. Now, unfortunately, because there are no pharmaceuticals for the condition, many patients go untreated. There are, in fact, approximately 25 million Americans who suffer from obstructive sleep apnea. I mentioned earlier that that's a potentially lethal condition, especially if you also suffer from heart failure or diabetes, and as a result, this is a national health problem. That's why the NIH put up $5 million to complete this study, actually on a cannabinoid known as dronabinol, which is repurposed for the condition.
So what is the company's technology then that you're looking to do to treat some of these conditions?
Well, dronabinol is the cannabinoid for obstructive sleep apnea. Then we have a full platform of ampakines for central sleep apnea and spinal damage. Again, conditions for which there are breathing deficits. And the ampakines have the effect of altering the breathing center in the brain such that breathing is restored more regularly. And those are really the two platforms, the cannabinoid on the one hand and the ampakine on the other. Most all of our drugs are in phase 2 trials or moving into phase 2 trials, aside from spinal cord injury, that's still in the preclinical stage presently. But our intention is to develop these rapidly because we want to bring to the American public treatments for diseases that are quite horrible, frankly.
And have you developed how they would be taken? Like, are they going to be drops or in pill form?
We have all of our medicines are small molecule oral, and that's their availability. So in general, patients prefer to have that kind of treatment as opposed to injections or infusions or devices. And as we proceed, our intention is to formulate them in ways that can be timed release or otherwise, such that patients are able to have greater compliance. Because as you know, the biggest problem with respect to most diseases is that patients do not comply.
And where was the science developed for the technologies that you're trying to prove out?
Great question. Two places. The cannabinoid dronabinol was invented approximately 20 years ago and has a long history of safety for cancer patients and AIDS patients, very limited indications. So that's a repurposing, if you will, and ultimately a reformulation. The ampakines were discovered and developed and really invented originally out of UC Irvine in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And they have been through three separate generations. And the ampakines affect a site just above the brainstem called the pre-Botzinger complex, and they're AMPA-type glutamate receptors, which increase the rate of firing of those neurons that ultimately have an impact on breathing.
And where are the clinical trials currently being held, and how long are they?
Fortunately for patients, the questions we ask are fairly simple, namely the nature and level of breathing, sleepiness the day after an intervention, and the trials for the obstructive sleep apnea medicine, dronabinol, have been, one trial, a large phase 2B trial with more than 80 patients, has just been concluded out of the universities of Illinois, the University of Chicago, Northwestern University, and the University of Alberta. The most recent ampakine trial, and that was for opioid-induced respiratory problems, was completed at Duke University.
So, well, firstly, before I get to my next question, what's your background? How did you get into this business?
Well, I have a doctorate in experimental psychophysiology and genetics, so I understand a little bit about the nervous system and its importance in connection with health.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. And I have an MBA in finance from Columbia, so I know a little bit about the science and the business, and I've been involved in the biotech industry, having done 6 companies over the course of many decades. My last company was Aztex, ASTX Pharmaceuticals, and that was NASDAQ listed, and that was sold for a little less than $900 million to Otsuka Pharmaceuticals in Japan.
So, Dr. Manuso, from what you can tell me, what are some of the goals and milestones for the company for the rest of 2016 going into 2017?
Well, later this year we expect to have 2 major milestones. The first would be the announcement of the results on the phase 2B trial coming from the dronabinol experience. And then secondarily, we have an ampakine that will report out from the Duke University trial in opioid-induced respiratory depression. And those results also are expected to be available and presented to the market in December. So 2 big milestones this year for us. We would then move to speak with the FDA about our intentions with respect to the next steps.
And where can our audience go and find more information about the company?
Well, our website, www.respirerx.com, is a good place. And there are a number of analysts that appreciate and understand the respiratory space, and they would be good folks to communicate with. But the starting point would be our website. Thank you.
My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive at the OTCQB Executive Forum at the OTC Marketplace in New York City. With me again is Dr. James Manuso from RespireRx, publicly traded company with the symbol RSPI. Dr. Manuso, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bob. A great pleasure.
Thank you.